Pulp Crazy. Earlier today, Boris Kitt of The Hollywood Reporter broke the news that Sony has acquired the film rights for Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan of the Apes. I'll put a link to the article in the show notes. But here's the high points. Kitt's article mentions that Sony is looking to reimagine the character and they have no creative team or cast on board as of yet. What do I think of these developments? It's not the worst thing I've ever heard. I'm really excited that Sony is interested in Tarzan and bringing him back on the big screen where he belongs. I'm not going to get upset with the revamp and reimagining talk at this point. It's just too early for that, guys. They don't even have a screenwriter or any type of cast in place yet. And to be honest, I don't think we've had a 100% faithful Edgar Rice Burroughs Tarzan movie yet. From the Johnny Weissmuller flicks all the way to the most recent outing with Alexander Skarsgård, there's definitely been deviations in the character. And that's just what characters do over time. They evolve, they change. For instance, I don't think I have to tell anybody that the Batman that first appeared in Detective Comics number 27 and the Superman that first appeared in Action Comics number 1 in the 1930s are not the same characters that are appearing today, let alone 10, 20, even 30 years ago. But as long as the creators stay true to the spirit of the character in its original conception, I'm okay with it. Now, just look how well received the Sherlock BBC series was. Now, I'm not saying they should bring Tarzan into the modern world. No, not at all. But the creators of the BBC Sherlock series stayed true to the spirit of the characters and the spirit of Conan Doyle's stories. That's what the filmmakers have to keep in mind here going forward. The one thing about Tarzan that absolutely works is his origin. The early chapters of Tarzan of the Apes are essential reading for anyone studying the history of the superhero. Burroughs sets out a perfect blueprint that nearly everyone after him mimicked when telling the origin for their quote-unquote superhuman character. While I believe the entire novel of Tarzan of the Apes is well written and is deserving of study, especially in schools, the beginning of the book reads like a piece of American mythology. The Greeks have their Odyssey and the Iliad. The Anglo-Saxons have Beowulf. The Norse have the Poetic Edda. The Finnish have the Kalevala. The Mesopotamians had Gilgamesh. As Americans, we have Tarzan. His origin and his upbringing need to be depicted on screen in this new movie and given the proper gravity that they deserve, while showcasing his strength and his intelligence. Showcasing his intelligence is really important. You cannot have him out there acting and speaking like the Johnny Weissmuller version, like some kind of caveman. When he's around other humans and he hasn't learned to speak English or whatever language these humans are speaking yet, he should be speaking in Mangani, and there should be subtitles so the audience understands what he's saying, even if the other characters don't. All of this is staying true to the core spirit of the character created by Edgar Rice Burroughs. That's number one. Number two, you cannot have this in historical Africa. You really have to embrace pulp Africa. And by that, I mean no interaction with the indigenous people of Africa. No matter how you do that, it's just going to cause trouble. No involvement with historic events. They need to focus on the Mangani and fantastic, pulpy, lost races and empires that Tarzan encounters. Now, in case you're not too familiar with the Mangani, they are the ape-like beings that raised Tarzan. They're not gorillas, they're not monkeys, and they're not chimps. I picture them as something more akin to the cryptid Sasquatch. The Mangani even have their own language, which, as mentioned before, should be subtitled by anyone speaking it, whether it be Tarzan or any of the Mangani. They really should make some of these Mangani into their own characters, whether that's by practical effects or visual effects. Visual effects have come a long way since the days of Greystoke, starring Christopher Lambert as Tarzan. Now, as for lost races, Tarzan's encountered a ton of them throughout his history, not just in the original novels, but in comic books and animated series. Really lean into the pulp Africa that Tarzan inhabits, not the real world. Now, if the filmmakers absolutely have to expand their view of Tarzan beyond Edgar Rice Burroughs' original vision, I would suggest they look at Philip Jose Farmer's Tarzan Alive and his Tarzan in the Dark Heart of Time. Tarzan Alive is Farmer's biography of the real Tarzan, and I think studying his analysis of the character and his adventures would further enrich the film. As for Tarzan in the Dark Heart of Time, I think that would be a great novel to adapt to the big screen. It has a lot of what I've been preaching in this video. Fantastic elements, and while the Mangani aren't involved, there's another race of beings called the Shang that would be a lot of fun to play around with as well. And lastly, you gotta cast the right guy. Now, I liked Alexander Skarsgård. I thought he was a great fit for the role, but in all the media interviews that he did, and I watched a lot of them, there was only one where they actually talked about the movie. Big props go out to former MTV VJ Sway Calloway, who had Skarsgård on his radio show, where him and his staff actually talked with Skarsgård about the movie. All of the other interviews I saw Skarsgård do quickly devolved to talk about his workout routine, how many abs he had, how he got his 8-pack, yada yada. It's not his fault, but you can't have your leading man's body become the central topic for your marketing campaign. I personally think that Charlie Hunnam from Sons of Anarchy, Pacific Rim, Crimson Peak, The Lost City of Z would be a great choice, but I'm afraid that we would fall down that same rabbit hole with him too. Whoever they pick has to have good on-screen chemistry with the love interest. Now, the love interest doesn't necessarily have to be Jane. The filmmakers do not want to tie Tarzan down too soon like Edgar Rice Burroughs himself did. But romance is a large part of Edgar Rice Burroughs' work and should be carried over onto the big screen with Tarzan and his leading lady. But we got a long way to go yet, guys. So everybody kind of sit back, relax, watch the news kind of leak out, and let's see where this is going before we completely bury it on the first day of the announcement. Pulp Crazy is located at pulpcrazy.com. I'm facebook.com/pulpcrazy, and I'm at pulpcrazy on Twitter and Instagram.